employees that you know aren't reaching their potential, but you don't have time to develop them? Then stay tuned, because I'm going to give you a quick strategy today to help develop the employees on your team. Hey, my dear, I'm leadership development coach Kathy Archer, and I help women leaders enjoy impactful leadership. And we do that by boosting your confidence, helping you learn to maintain your composure, and learning how to lead with integrity. Now, today we're talking about developing your employees. And I know that many of us, we interview these, new people and we're like, oh my God, they're great. They're going to be wonderful. And we see some potential in them and then something happens. Or you've had an employee around for a while and you just know that there's more there, but you're not getting it out. Why is that? Well, here's the thing. I know that if you're in survival mode and you're stuck in sort of that hamster wheel of go, 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 run here, do this, do that, your employees are in the same place too. They are busy, they're overwhelmed. All of you are playing whack-a-mole. Hit this crisis, hit this fire, deal with this drama, run over here and fix this hole over here, fill in this spot here. And you run around all day and you chase these fires, but you never have time to do the work that will grow and develop you. And that causes your team to stagnate. It causes your employees to feel disrespected, not cared for. When we stop growing, we don't feel good. We were meant to develop on and on and on and on till we die. We don't just stop growing and developing when we turn 18. We were meant to continually grow and develop, to stretch our brain, to stretch our hearts, to stretch the way we work, to grow our confidence, to learn new things. And when we stop doing that, we stop enjoying the day-to-day work. So you need to come back to figuring out how to develop your team. What you might do is you might sit down and do your annual performance appraisal, or maybe you haven't even done that. I know that many of you don't even have time to do performance appraisals, but let's just imagine that you've at least done a performance appraisal and you help the employee, hopefully, again, not always, but hopefully, develop a bit of a development plan. You set some goals, you know what you want to work on, or they want to work on, or you want them to work on. And that's it. You rarely find the time to come back and review that development plan, check it to see how they're doing, mentor them, coach them, guide them, develop them. You rarely get the opportunity to do that. And you hope that they're going to do it on their own, but Lord knows they don't. And again, that's because none of us have time. We are so busy doing the work, that we miss the chance, the opportunity, the focus to develop ourselves to be better. And here's the thing, when we can focus on developing ourselves individually, each member on the team, you as the leader, when everybody grows and develops, even just a tiny little bit, the whole team grows and develops. And you learn new ways of doing things and you interact differently together. And you move out of that place of maybe a toxic work environment, if that's where you're at, or maybe just an okay workplace, to one that's really thriving and growing and developing. You as a leader get out of survival mode. And again, you're thriving in leading this team forward. So how do you do this quickly? How do you invest in the development of your employees quickly? I have a strategy. And you're going to push back on this strategy a little bit. I know you are, because I would have as well when I was a leader. And yet, I'm going to challenge you to try it. Not just once, but for a while. A few months, actually, is what I'd love to see you try it. Here's the deal. We have meetings. Tons of meetings in many organizations. Way too many meetings in many organizations, and useless meetings in many organizations. I get it. Some are important, some are needed, some are necessary. But you know as well as I do that a lot of time in meetings is wasted time. What if we used a bit of that time to be more productive in growing our team, to lay the foundation and develop them? So imagine, I'm going to walk you through this scenario. And again, I know that there's a little bit of pushback, but I'm going to walk you through. Imagine that you are starting your staff meetings with a conversation about each person's growth and development, an opportunity for them to report back to the team what they've done. Let's imagine that you do this monthly. So what they've done in the last month around their growth and development. And let's imagine that each person has 2 minutes, maybe 3 max, depending on how many people you have on your team, to give that report out. Small, tiny, bite-sized report outs. Let me give you some examples of what that could be. I've been struggling with my workload, and so I'm trying to figure out how to be more productive. So I've been reading Getting Things Done by David Allen, which is this productivity book Bible, I've been told. And yeah, I'm loving it, learning new things, trying to figure out how to not keep everything in my head and put some things down in a safe place. That's what I've been learning through GTD, Getting Things Done, David Allen's book. I mean, I don't know how long that took me, less than a minute probably, but that could be one person's update. Maybe someone else is saying, you guys know that I hate getting out there networking, so I'm pushing myself a little bit to network. It was, identified on my performance appraisal that I need to interact more with the agencies in our community. So I have pushed myself to put 2 meetings on my calendar every month where I'm face to face with other people to work on that, getting outside my comfort zone and work on that skill. That could be a second update. Third one, maybe somebody says, I'm struggling with confidence. I'm reading Kathy Archer's book, Mastering Confidence, and working through her free course that goes with the book. I'm learning a ton about how confidence is what I think, not what somebody else thinks. And I'm learning to be more confident in some of those meetings with our funders where I've kept quiet sometimes and I need to voice some real concerns more often. So that's what I'm working on. Those are 3 quick updates that took like a minute or 2. Imagine if your whole team, maybe you have 5 or 10 people on your team, did those updates. Imagine if you did that monthly. I have some notes here. I want to make sure I'm grabbing the right notes. So if we were doing this, here's some of the benefits. First, you would learn from each other. Oh, there's a book on productivity. Tell me more about that. There's a book on confidence. Tell me more about that. Oh, networking opportunities. Yeah, I got to do that too. What's it like? How are you getting in there and starting to network? See the opportunity for people to learn. It creates a culture of growth. I've been talking lately about growth mindset. And many of us are in a fixed mindset. And with that fixed mindset, we come back to the leader has to solve all of our problems for us. And when we realize that as employees, hey, wait a minute, I can figure some of this out on my own, or I can ask my colleagues rather than always going to my boss, my guess is you'll reduce some of that complaining that you find and even some of that gossip that goes on because people are starting to take responsibility. That's the third benefit, is that you empower them. So rather than feeling, again, if we're not growing, we're stuck, we're stagnant. When you empower them to take responsibility for their personal growth and development, they feel stronger. Now, here's the thing. You've heard me say this before. Your path as a leader to success is personal and professional development, but you have to take responsibility for that as well. If you're waiting for your boss, your board chair, your organization, the funding, if you're waiting for somebody to give you the opportunity to develop yourself, it's not going to happen. The nonprofit sector is way too crisis-oriented, way too underfunded and under-resourced for that to happen. You have to figure out your own personal and professional curriculum. Now, I've done some training on that in the last few months because it doesn't have to be costly. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. And that's what I want you to start role modeling for your team. Reading a book here, taking a quick course there, just stretching outside your comfort zone. All of those things are growth and development. So the benefits of doing this, learn from each other, create a culture of growth, empower each other. And then the fourth benefit is that it creates a little bit of accountability. Now, I'm going to get into some do's and don'ts in a second, but just having to report back in a month saying, I'm reading this book, and a month later you're like, I never touched it. That's not going to feel so good. And so making sure that, I know that a month later we're going to do this, I'm going to do a little bit extra effort to get that done. Here's some do's and don'ts that I want you to think about if you're going to do this activity. And I really encourage you to. Do not police this. Do not go, that's all you've done this month? I thought you were supposed to be working on this. Don't do that. Let them instead bring forward what they're comfortable with. The more you allow them to feel comfortable with it and start to get into the groove over time, the more comfortable they'll feel. And the more you role model it, I would encourage you maybe in the beginning to go first, but sometimes to sit back and let other people go first to hear what they're saying. But as month after month, as you role model it and as other people in the team feel comfortable, that will pull people along. But don't sit there in the middle of that conversation and go, you're supposed to be working on this. What about that? Why haven't you finished that book? That's a whole other conversation. If you need to have a developmental conversation with that individual, this is not the opportunity for that. This is the opportunity for open, comfortable sharing. Second, do not let someone monopolize the time, and do not let this activity run what's the word? I don't even know, but too long. Do instead time it. I'm a Toastmaster, and at Toastmasters, we time our introductions, we time how long our speeches are, we time everything, because we don't actually have a sense often until we do this, how long a minute or two is. And so when you time people 2 minutes, they'll learn to do their update ahead of time. They might write it out ahead of time. They might practice it ahead of time. But when you keep it to 2 minutes, it will be a short, quick thing, and it will be more manageable as a team to keep this ongoing. So don't police it. Do encourage them to share what they're comfortable with. Don't let someone monopolize the time. Do set the timer. Don't put this off. I know that funding request is so important right now. I know that standards review is happening and you are busy. I know that there's a fire and a crisis and a drama and there's lots going on. I get that. But if you don't create the time, make the time, invest the time, place this a priority, it will fall to the wayside and you will live forever in crisis mode. If you want to be one of those teams in the nonprofit sector that actually get out of that mode, where you actually as a leader ditch survival mode and thrive, and where your team thrives, you have to do a flip. You have to put, you know how that thing about put your oxygen mask on first? This is what you have to do for your team. You have to teach them. You have to role model. You have to set the stage. You have to create the environment for them to take care of themselves first as well. And that, a primary part of that is their individual growth and development. But when you do it as a team, rather than saying, I'm going to talk to you at supervision, and then you never get to supervision, or you never get to that conversation in supervision. Let's imagine that you have 5 people on your team and each person gets 3 minutes. That's 15 minutes. You're done. That would have taken 15 minutes with them and 15 minutes with them and 15 minutes with them. This is a much quicker, more succinct way to get their growth and development conversation in a way that develops team capacity, in a way that helps them learn from each other, empowers them. So, model the way. Koos and Posner, if you've ever read their leadership book, that's one of their bottom line. Koos and Posner, or maybe it's Stephen Covey. Anyhow, model the way. Model the way. You have to set the tone. You have to be the one to start it off sometimes and say, you know what, this is the book that I've been reading, or this is the podcast I've been listening to, or this is the mini course that I'm taking. This is the webinar that I signed up for. All of those things. What I would love to see is, as you grow and develop, as your team grows and develops, as the cohesiveness in your team comes together, that you start to model the way to more vulnerable conversations. In the last couple episodes, we've been talking about the complainers on your team, and that you have to come back to them and hold them accountable for the change that they're going to make. But I also said that last question, let me just review quickly. If you have a complainer on your team, first, acknowledge their pain. Be sincere and genuine in whatever it is that's going on for them. 2, ask them the direction they want to go. We're often focused on the past and blaming and finger pointing. Ask them what outcome they want. And then the 3rd step is to ask them, what can you do to get there? So if they're complaining about their coworker in the office who always turns the heat up, I get it that you want me as a boss to deal with that issue, but what can you do to deal with that? And so maybe it might be, well, I could, wear a sweater to layer so that I'm not always doing that. I could ask if she'd like me to, buy magic bag so that she stays warm and I'm not. I mean, I'm just throwing crazy ideas out. Primarily because I dealt with that issue. I don't know how many times. Why is it that the heat in an office? Oh, maybe it's because in nonprofits, it's typically a bunch of women. And yeah, okay. I'm getting sidetracked. Anyhow, the bonus step I talked about in those last 2 episodes was that you as a leader need to ask them, what can I do in a non-naggy, non-sort of controlling way, help hold you accountable for doing that step? That takes courage to do that. That takes vulnerability to do that. And that might be a place where you are. So when you're doing these team meeting updates where you're talking about your own growth and development, maybe it's not a book or something tangible. Maybe you are working on redirecting your employees. And that might be what you say in that meeting in time. Maybe not the first few times that you're doing this, but in time you might say, hey, you know what? I'm finding that I'm getting questions that I don't need to be the one to answer. So what I'm working on is setting some boundaries for you guys and redirecting you. And I'll be honest, that feels a little bit uncomfortable. So I'm asking you to work with me. Maybe we can use a little bit of humor when you come into the office and ask me a question and I redirect you. Maybe that would help us get through it. And start to be more vulnerable as you set the stage, model the way, demonstrate to your team. As you create this growth mindset environment, you will really find that your team embraces it as well. But you have to be the one to set the tone. You're creating a new culture, a new way of doing things. Make the time for this conversation. Create the time for this conversation. Make it a priority regardless of all of the stuff that's going on. I get that the other things are priorities, crisis. I know that you need funding. I know that there's stuff happening. But make space for this. And when you do, you will really start to see things change. You will really start to see your organization flourish, and you will find that not only you are thriving as a leader, but your team is thriving as a leader. So that's a quick strategy to help you develop your team players. Let me know in the comments if you've tried it, how it works, and the results that you've had, or send me an email. If you found today's episode helpful, then you are going to love the training library. Many women leaders wish that they had access to a coach or a mentor, but don't believe that they or their organization can afford it. That's not true. Inside of the training library, you will find accessible and affordable ongoing personal and professional development opportunities. Remember, I said earlier that your path to success is ongoing personal and professional development, and you have to be the one to set the stage for that. The training library provides that. That way, when you hit those inevitable bumps that you will in leadership is always about humps and bumps. You will know where to find the tools, resources, and the access to a coach at your fingertips. If you want to know more about the training library, go to kathyarcher.com/library, kathyarcher.com/library. And in the show notes today, I've included the links to my book. I've included the links to a bunch of my favorite books from last year, as well as something else in there. Can't remember what else I included in the links. But if you want to help your staff grow and develop, I have tons of resources on my website. When you grow and develop, when you mentor and grow and develop your team and you start to thrive as a team and you change that culture, that growth mindset starts to really evolve in your culture, you, my dear, will move from surviving to thriving in both your leadership and your life. Go make the rest of your day awesome.